Success is not given, it is not inherited, it is not granted by accident or by the sympathy of the world. Success is constructed brick by brick, law by law, thought by thought in the secret chambers of your inner world. There is no man who becomes successful outwardly before first conquering himself inwardly. There is no woman who builds an empire in the world before first building an empire in her own mind. And I say to you now, as plainly and as powerfully as truth permits, if you do not take control of your inner world, the outer world will take control of you. This is the first and final secret of success. All success is internal before it becomes external. And the man who masters his inner world becomes unstoppable in any arena of life. You do not rise because the world gives you permission. You rise because you gave yourself command. You do not become disciplined because it's convenient. You become disciplined because it's necessary, because success demands it. Understand this law. If you allow emotion to govern your actions, you forfeit your power. But if you command your thoughts, you command your future. The modern man is not lacking information. He is drowning in it. He is not lost for opportunity. He is paralyzed by distraction. He is not oppressed by the system. He is enslaved by his own untrained mind. And so the question is not whether you are capable. The question is whether you will train yourself to become what you are capable of. I am not speaking of external training. I am speaking of the rare, sacred training of the mind, the discipline of emotion, the enforcement of thought, the sovereignty of will. Because without mental sovereignty, there is no success, only survival. Let me speak now directly to your mind, not to the surface, but to the depths, to that inner genius that has waited patiently beneath your fears, your delays, your excuses. And I ask you, not rhetorically, but urgently, are you the master of your mind or its servant? Because that question will define your life more than your talents, more than your resources, more than your conditions. The man who is ruled by emotion can be manipulated. The man who is ruled by reaction can be destroyed. The man who is ruled by the past will never shape the future. But the man who rules himself, the man who trains his emotions like a soldier, the man who governs his thinking with law, with order, with discipline, that man becomes inevitable. That man becomes a force. That man becomes success personified. Let us begin then with the first pillar of all success, definiteness of purpose. Until you have defined your purpose with precision, you are a ship without a compass. You are drifting no matter how fast you're moving. You are wasting no matter how hard you're working. You are replaceable no matter how intelligent you appear. Definiteness of purpose is not an idea. It is not a dream. It is not a vague goal. It is a decision so clear, so complete, so absolute that everything in your life must align with it or be eliminated. A man with a definite purpose is not distracted. He is not derailed by opinions. He does not explain himself to the unqualified. He does not change direction because the crowd shifted. Because purpose is not about feeling, it is about finality. And when your purpose becomes final, your excuses become irrelevant. Now consider the cause and effect truth that follows. If you are vague in purpose, you will be vague in action. And vague action builds vague results. But if you are precise in purpose, you become powerful in execution. And precise execution builds legacies. And how is this purpose enforced? By the second pillar, self-discipline. Discipline is the bridge between purpose and reality. It is the daily proof that you are serious. It is the silent sermon you preach to yourself every time you obey the hard path instead of the easy one. Discipline is not punishment. It is a declaration of identity. It says, I am no longer who I used to be, and I will no longer tolerate the behaviors that kept me there. Most men want change. Few want discipline. And that is why most men stay the same. But the successful man, he knows. Discipline is the price of freedom. Discipline is the currency of power. Discipline is the signature of those who cannot be ignored. Let me speak plainly. If you cannot control your mornings, you will not control your momentum. If you cannot control your words, you will not control your reputation. If you cannot control your emotions, you will not control your future. Discipline begins not when you feel ready, but when you realize that your feelings are no longer trustworthy, because your feelings want comfort. Your purpose wants greatness, and the two are not friends. The third success mindset secret is one that most men mock until they see it work. Autosuggestion. What you say to yourself in private becomes the script your subconscious memorizes. And what your subconscious memorizes, you act on without question. Your thoughts are not random, they are repeated. Your behaviors are not accidental, they are automated. And your destiny is not mysterious, it is programmed by your inner dialogue. Every time you say, I can't focus, you are programming your mind to obey distraction. Every time you say, I'm not good under pressure, you are licensing your nervous system to collapse. Every time you say, I always procrastinate, you are signing a contract with your lower self. But you can change it, and you must. If you want to master your mind, you must become the author of your inner narrative. Say, I respond, I do not react. I execute, I do not hesitate. I am calm under fire. I walk in clarity, not confusion. I train, I do not explain. I speak to myself like a commander, not a critic. I obey my vision, not my emotion. Repeat it. Reinforce it. Because repetition creates reality, and your reality will never outgrow the dominant thoughts you've planted. That brings us to the fourth and most misunderstood law: mastery over emotion. You cannot become great if you are still addicted to how things feel. You cannot lead if your mood is still the king of your decision-making. You cannot dominate if your emotional state still negotiates your actions. You must understand, emotion is not the enemy, but it must never be the emperor. Emotion is a message, not a mandate. It is feedback, not instruction. And the man who shines brightest is the man who can feel everything but still obey principle over impulse. Because mastery is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to move through emotion without surrendering to it. If you wish to be powerful, you must learn to pause. To pause before the outburst. To pause before the reaction. To pause before the weakness pretends to be wisdom. And in that pause, you remember, I am not here to be ruled. I am here to rule myself. The next unshakable pillar of success is one that separates thinkers from followers, leaders from drifters, creators from consumers. It is the quiet power behind every enduring empire. Accurate thinking. You may have heard the phrase, knowledge is power. I tell you this now, that is incomplete. Knowledge is only potential power. It becomes real power only when it is organized, focused, and applied through accurate thinking. Accurate thinking is the disciplined ability to separate fact from fiction, truth from opinion, signal from noise. And I say to you with the force of experience, until you learn to think accurately, your life will be governed by false conclusions, conclusions that were never yours to begin with. The average man does not think. He reacts. He remembers. He repeats what he has heard. But true thinking is an act of rebellion against mediocrity. It is the deliberate choice to hold every idea, every fear, every story up to the light of reason and say, does this serve me or does it enslave me? The man who thinks accurately does not gossip. He does not assume. He does not act from emotion. He does not chase trends. He does not echo the crowd. He asks, what do I know? How do I know it? Is it grounded in fact or just convenient belief? Is this fear real or is it residue from someone else's failure? Most people have inherited their fears. They wear limitations like family heirlooms. They worship the opinions of those who have never built anything. But you must be different. You must become a surgeon of thought, cutting away every distortion until only precision remains. Because inaccurate thinking breeds emotional chaos. And emotional chaos is the enemy of all achievement. I say this to you now. Write it on the walls of your consciousness. When your thinking becomes clear, your life becomes unstoppable. Let us now progress into the next great principle, one that few understand, but every titan of industry, leader of movements, and master of fate has wielded like a blade. Personal initiative. You cannot build anything magnificent by waiting for permission. You cannot escape mediocrity by being polite with your destiny. You must move. You must act. You must create momentum when no one believes in you, no one supports you, and nothing seems to work. Personal initiative is the fire of all progress. It is the act of acting before you are told. It is the decision to execute without being reminded. It is the refusal to wait for perfect conditions. The man who waits for perfect conditions will never build anything because he does not yet understand the law. You do not rise after conditions improve. You rise by improving yourself first. And that act of rising improves your conditions. Personal initiative is doing what must be done, whether anyone watches or not. It is training when your motivation is dead. It is rising when your plan has failed. It is speaking when silence would be safer. It is refusing to delay when you could rationalize the delay. Because the man who moves on command is a follower, but the man who commands himself becomes a force of nature. Do not mistake stillness for calmness. Most stillness is fear in disguise. Do not mistake silence for thoughtfulness. Most silence is hesitation, camouflaged as humility. You must learn to act not out of pressure, but out of principle. You must become the kind of person whose initiative builds the road ahead where others only see fog. Let the timid wait. Let the emotional delay. Let the critics speak. You act. And when you do, you begin to unlock a universal law few have the discipline to use. The law of mental neutrality. This law is the secret key to inner power, and it begins with one truth. He who reacts forfeits power. He who remains neutral selects his response from principle. Mental neutrality does not mean apathy. It means command. It means the ability to step back from the noise, to enter into internal silence, and to choose your response based on what serves your long-term mission, not your short-term emotion. Let me tell you plainly, the man who is emotionally reactive will always be easy to control. He will fall for traps. He will be manipulated by praise. He will lash out when baited. He will burn bridges that took decades to build. Why? Because he never learned to pause. He never learned to detach from the first emotion and wait for the second thought. Mental neutrality is the calm of the master. It is the pause before reply. It is the breath before action. It is the strategy that says, I see the bait and I refuse to bite. When a man learns this law, he becomes unshakable. Not because he suppresses emotion, but because he has trained it. He no longer obeys the noise within. He oversees it like a general overseeing a battlefield. He surveys, he waits, and when he moves, it is always with precision. Now, I say to you, learn this law, train it daily. Pause before speaking. Breathe before deciding. Stand still before reacting. And you will walk through storms that destroy other men. Let us go deeper still, because the final secret is one that lives beneath all the others. The foundation, the root, the command center of mastery. It is not found in books. It is not granted by teachers. It is not inherited from mentors. It is built only by you alone in the sacred silence of self-reflection. It is the principle of thought first. In every area of your life, every habit, every success, every failure, the thought came first. If your habits are weak, it's because your thoughts are undisciplined. If your results are chaotic, it's because your mind is unfocused. If your confidence is unstable, it's because your thoughts have not been trained to obey truth. Nothing in your outer life changes until the thoughts you accept change. You must begin then, not by asking, what do I want to achieve? But first, what must I become in thought, in principle, in belief, in command? You are not here to survive. You are not here to repeat what others do. You are here to master the most powerful tool in existence, your mind. That mastery begins now. You become unstoppable the moment you stop negotiating with your lesser self. You stop reasoning with your laziness. You stop explaining your emotions. You stop making excuses for inconsistency. You stop entertaining distractions that feel good but rob you blind. Understand this. Your mind is a kingdom, but most have allowed it to become a marketplace, a place where any opinion can enter, any emotion can dominate, any fear can bargain for attention, any weakness can speak as if it were wisdom. But the successful man does not tolerate anarchy in the kingdom of thought. He establishes law. He sets order. He installs guards at the gate of his attention. He decides what enters and what must be thrown out. He examines every thought and says, does this serve the vision or sabotage it? Does this belief make me stronger or softer? Is this emotion a teacher or a trickster? Is this voice in my mind my own, or have I inherited the cowardice of the world around me? Most men live as mirrors, reflecting what is popular, emotional, or loud. But the man who leads himself becomes a lamp, a source of power, not a reflection of noise. He becomes a furnace of inner fire that burns even when the outer winds try to extinguish him. Now listen carefully. Every man is offered the crown of self-leadership, but few accept it because it comes with responsibility, not comfort. And the price of that crown is this: you must die to who you were. You must surrender the parts of you that react, whine, overthink, crave praise, seek validation, collapse under pressure, and blame circumstances. You must bury the version of you who needed support to begin, applause to continue, and permission to act. That man must fall so that the real you can rise. The man who cannot detach from emotion will forever be a servant to circumstance. But the man who can observe emotion and still move by principle becomes a master of fate. That is not poetic. It is structural. It is cause and effect. Observe the greatest builders, the wealthiest innovators, the calmest leaders. They are not superhuman. They are not lucky. They are not different. They are simply more trained. Trained in one area, mastery of their own mind. They are not ruled by noise, they use it. They are not afraid of fear, they study it. They are not distracted by moods, they command them. And in commanding their emotions, they earn the right to command results. Let me speak now of a habit so rare, so elite, so powerful that most have never even considered it. The habit of self-confrontation. You cannot grow if you will not look in the mirror. You cannot evolve if you are more committed to feeling good than to seeing truth. The man who fears truth remains weak. The man who avoids truth remains blind. But the man who hunts truth within himself becomes unbeatable because he no longer needs the world to correct him. Every day ask yourself, where am I lying to myself? Where have I grown soft? Where have I chosen comfort over greatness? What am I tolerating in my mind that I would never tolerate from another man? And most importantly, am I the kind of man I would follow if I were watching from the outside? If the answer is no, then your work begins. Not tomorrow. Not after motivation. Now, because every day you avoid your inner weakness, it grows teeth. Every day you tolerate emotional indulgence, you dull your blade. Every day you refuse to confront the undisciplined thoughts, the reactive patterns, the lazy narratives, you surrender the keys to your kingdom. But the day you face yourself, the day you say, I will not let weakness live in me unchallenged. The day you demand your mind obey your purpose, that is the day you begin to live as a creator, not a consumer. As a king, not a captive. As a force, not a follower. And let no one deceive you. The most dangerous man is not the loudest. He is the most disciplined, the most emotionally neutral, the most self-directed. He does not fear criticism because he already criticizes himself with more clarity than the world ever could. He does not flinch under pressure because he is trained for pressure in the silence of his own soul. He does not need applause because his daily standard is the reward. You must become that man, because the world respects one thing and one thing only: alignment. When your thoughts match your actions, and your actions match your mission, and your mission is driven by law, not lust, you become rare. You become remembered. You become a presence that cannot be ignored. So the next time you want to complain, observe instead. The next time you want to delay, decide instead. The next time you want to react, pause instead. The next time you want to quit, remember, the moment you break your inner standard, the outer world breaks its respect for you. And I promise you this, you are only ever one thought away from domination or defeat, one belief away from power or paralysis, one decision away from alignment or decay. Your life obeys the standard you set in private. You may fool the world. You may impress a crowd. You may decorate your image with eloquence, charisma, or false humility. But you will never fool your subconscious mind, and it is that mind that runs your life. If your private standard is weak, your public success will always collapse. If your private standard is inconsistent, your public power will flicker like a candle in the storm. If your private standard is emotional, reactive, undisciplined, then no matter what you build, it will rot from the inside. But if your private standard is iron, if your thoughts are governed by law, if your decisions are filtered through purpose, not emotion, then I promise you, you will become what this world rarely sees, a mind no longer at war with itself. Do you want to know why most men never rise? It is not because they lack intelligence. It is not because they lack opportunity. It is not because of the economy, their past, or their critics. It is because they are still addicted to permission. They are still waiting for the world to believe in them before they believe in themselves. Still waiting for support before they execute. Still waiting for praise before they persist. But understand this, and understand it well. The world does not crown kings. The world obeys the man who has already crowned himself. And how does a man do that? He trains when there is no applause. He speaks truth when lies are popular. He builds when no one is watching. He endures when his emotions beg him to escape. He corrects himself before life needs to. He rules his own mind before he ever seeks to influence another. Because he knows the law, you cannot lead others until you have first conquered yourself. You cannot build outer freedom until you have mastered inner discipline. You cannot earn respect until you walk as one who respects his own thoughts. And now, I say this to you not as advice, but as an unbreakable verdict. If you are waiting for clarity before you begin, you are already behind. If you are waiting for motivation before you act, you are still a servant. If you are waiting for emotions to feel perfect before you move, you are still a child in the psychology of success. But if you will rise now, in the midst of uncertainty, in the heat of pressure, in the silence of discipline, then everything you want will begin to bow to the power of your inner authority, because you are no longer negotiating, no longer reacting, no longer explaining, no longer aligning with weakness. You are becoming the standard. And that, my friend, is the rarest form of power on this planet. The man who no longer needs permission, the man who leads his thoughts like an army, the man who lives by principle and lets the results fall where they may. He does not chase success. Success is pulled to him by the magnetic force of his unshakable self-command. You ask, what separates the few who rise from the many who sink? It is not luck. It is not timing. It is not brilliance. It is this. The successful man made a decision, and he never broke it. The unsuccessful man made excuses, and he never stopped making them. That is all. So I leave you now with this fire. Decide. Declare war on your lesser self. Build standards so high they scare the weak out of your life. Speak to yourself with the voice of a commander. Act as if your future is watching, because it is. The hour is late. The world is noisy. Distraction is abundant. Mediocrity is seducing. But the truth still stands, and it will wait for no one. If you want to win, truly win, then don't beg for motivation. Don't chase after sympathy. Don't wait for applause. Become the kind of man who doesn't need to be reminded. Become the kind of man who trains when it's inconvenient. Become the kind of man who speaks little and builds loudly. Because in the final equation, when your mind is fully trained, when your emotions are fully mastered, when your daily thoughts are no longer passengers but pilots, you will look back and realize you were never held back by anything but your own untrained mind. And now that your mind is trained, now that your standard is non-negotiable, now that your soul has been set on fire by principle, you are no longer an individual. You are a force, and a force cannot be stopped. Now go. Train your mind. Master your emotions. Build your standard. Lead your life. And let no man, no fear, no excuse ever hold the pen to your destiny again. Ever. There is a voice within you that whispers, even now, that you are meant for more than survival. That voice is the voice of your greatness still buried beneath habits, distraction, and the noise of a world that has trained you to think small, move slow, and act poor. But hear me clearly. Success is not born. It is constructed. It is engineered by those who master their emotions, discipline their habits, and seize command of their inner world with the force of will. The difference between the rich and the poor is not merely in wealth, it is in worldview. The rich think differently. They do not think with the emotion of lack. They think with the clarity of structure. They do not move with the chaos of reaction. They move with the command of vision. Let this sink into your bones. You will never rise above the quality of your thoughts. You will never outperform the boundaries of your belief. And you will never rule your life if your emotions rule you. If you wish to become unstoppable, you must begin within. Not with money, not with luck, but with mental discipline, with emotional detachment, with the decision to become the master of the forces that control most men. The world will tempt you with shortcuts. The rich ignore them, the poor chase them. The world will offer you approval. The rich don't need it, the poor crave it. The world will trigger your emotions. The rich remain calm. The poor react. So, I ask you now, not softly, not casually, but as a command to your highest potential. Are you ready to stop thinking like the poor? Are you ready to stop reacting like the weak? Are you ready to live, move, and act like the rich in mind and spirit before the bank ever reflects it? Because until you do, success will remain a stranger. But the moment you truly decide to think big, start small, and act rich in thought, you begin to attract results that no longer flee from you, but move toward you. Let us define the first law: definiteness of purpose. The rich never wander. They walk as if pulled by destiny. And indeed, they are, for destiny is merely purpose multiplied by persistence. Poor minds drift, rich minds decide. To think big is not to dream of fantasies. It is to choose a clear and compelling destination and to bind your actions, thoughts, and priorities to it as if your life depends on it, because it does. What is your purpose? Not what you wish for, what you are willing to suffer for, what you are willing to wake early for, to be ridiculed for, to be misunderstood for. That is purpose. That is the starting point of the rich. And now the second principle: start small with military precision. Do not be deceived by the illusion of grand gestures. Do not confuse intensity with consistency. The rich know empires are not built by bursts, they are built by brick. You start small, because the small is where character is built. You master your morning, not your year. You master your hour, not your lifetime. You master your thought, not the entire market. Because the man who cannot rule his day cannot rule his business. The woman who cannot govern her emotions cannot govern a company. The individual who cannot show up for the small things will be crushed by the weight of large responsibilities. This is where the poor fail. They think success is a leap. The rich know it is a march. And this march requires the third principle: act like the rich, not in spending, but in thinking. What do the rich do differently? They detach from temporary emotion. They respond instead of react. They delay gratification. They take personal initiative. They build mental frameworks based on truth, not trend. The poor, by contrast, are ruled by moods. The poor chase comfort. They wait for motivation. They require permission. But the rich live by principle. They do not hope to feel right. They train themselves to do right regardless of feeling. And this is where we begin the climb toward emotional detachment. You must understand this. Emotion is energy, but energy without direction is chaos. And most men live in emotional chaos. They are up, they are down, they are consistent for 3 days and then disappear for 3 weeks. They let their mood dictate their calendar and then wonder why their life lacks structure, wealth, or respect. But emotional detachment is the superpower of the successful. It is the ability to observe without obeying. It is the wisdom to feel anger but not speak from it, to feel fear but not act from it, to feel doubt but not believe it. The rich master their emotions not by suppression but by training. They practice calm, they breathe in conflict, they move when tired, they smile when disrespected, they do what is necessary, not what is comfortable. Let me repeat this law, for it is eternal. If you allow emotions to govern your actions, you forfeit your power. But if you command your thoughts, you command your future. Now we turn to autosuggestion, the method by which the mind is programmed. Understand, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who trains your thoughts. And if you do not train them with suggestion, they will be trained by society. Every day, you are telling yourself who you are, whether you mean to or not. Every delay says, I am not ready. Every distraction says, I cannot focus. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you reinforce the belief that you are not to be trusted. But every act of follow-through says, I am consistent. Every focused hour says, I am powerful. Every refusal to quit says, I am inevitable. You must repeat these truths until your mind accepts them as law. I am calm, regardless of pressure. I am focused, regardless of chaos. I act with precision, not emotion. I do not chase, I attract through consistency. Autosuggestion is how the rich think rich before they ever become rich. They install the belief until it becomes identity, and identity drives action, and action, repeated, becomes results. You must now become a sculptor of thought. You must chisel away every lie society taught you. You must remove the belief that you are not enough. You must erase the mental poverty of your upbringing. And you must replace it with the disciplined repetition of truth. The truth that says, you are capable but undisciplined, and discipline is within your reach. You begin with thought. You continue with action. You repeat with clarity. And you arrive at destiny. But do not expect this to be easy. Nothing great was ever built in ease. You will have to resist your lower self. You will have to confront laziness, emotion, delay, confusion. You will have to walk when others rest. Speak with clarity when others argue. Stay in motion when others wait for motivation. But this is the price of greatness, and you are not here for comfort. You are here to build an inner world so solid that no economy, no rejection, no failure can move you. Because when you master the inner, the outer bends in response. And this is the next law, accurate thinking. Rich minds think in terms of effectiveness. Poor minds think in terms of emotion. The poor ask, do I feel like it? The rich ask, will it move me closer to the goal? The poor want to be entertained. The rich want to be transformed. The poor are afraid to offend. The rich are afraid to betray their calling. To become a master of accurate thinking is to examine each thought and ask, is this true or is this just a feeling? Is this based on principle or based on programming? Will this idea serve my long-term future or satisfy my short-term ego? The man who asks these questions is the man who becomes immune to manipulation, propaganda, groupthink, emotional storms, and inner weakness. He becomes sovereign. He becomes dangerous. And the world does not know what to do with a man who cannot be controlled by emotion. This is the final gate you must pass through. To build a mind so disciplined, so neutral, so precise, that you become a force of stillness in a world of noise. And that is where we will go next. The weak act from emotion. The average act from opinion. The rich act from principle. Mental neutrality is the power to observe without reacting. To step back from the chaos of others and say, what is real, what is right, what is required? The poor speak before thinking. The rich think deeply and speak with precision. The poor respond to offense with outrage. The rich respond to offense with silence or strategy. Mental neutrality is not taught in schools, but it is the rarest form of maturity, and it is required if you wish to lead, to build, to become more than a slave to your environment. The neutral mind is dangerously effective because it is never overwhelmed, it is never impulsive, it is never dragged into conflict, it did not initiate. It is always focused on outcome and not ego. Train this daily. Sit in silence. Delay your reaction. Question your instinct. Let the storm pass before you speak. Let the wave crash before you decide. This discipline, once embedded, will become your fortress. Now let us move deeper into the power of calmness. You may think calmness is weakness. That is because you were raised in a culture that values noise over depth. The truly powerful are always calm, not because life is easy, but because they are no longer ruled by inner chaos. Calmness is clarity of aim. Calmness is sureness of step. Calmness is confidence without arrogance. The poor scream when threatened. The rich breathe. The poor panic under pressure. The rich tighten their focus. Calmness is the result of disciplined thinking. It is what happens when you no longer require validation, when you no longer flinch from criticism, when your purpose speaks louder than your insecurity, and you develop it the same way you develop wealth, through small, consistent daily acts of control. Control your speech, control your posture, control your breath, control your schedule, control your inputs, what you watch, who you listen to, how long you linger on what does not serve you. Because when you control your inputs, you command your mind. And when you command your mind, you command your life. This leads us to the next sacred principle. Own the rich know instinctively, and the poor never realize. Thought comes first. All wealth, all power, all status, all mastery begins with thought. Not wish, not hope, thought, because thought is the seed of identity. And identity is the foundation of behavior. If you think like a victim, you will act like one. If you think like the masses, you will live like the masses. If you think like the rich with precision, detachment, responsibility, clarity, then your actions will follow in kind. So the first discipline is to think on purpose. Reject wandering thoughts, reject shallow opinions, reject unfiltered emotion. Instead, choose the thoughts you dwell on. Install the beliefs you wish to live by. Repeat the truths that sculpt your character. And understand this, the world you live in today is the reflection of thoughts you believed in yesterday. So if you wish to change your outer world, you must first declare war on every useless, weak, disempowering thought that enters your mind. You must become ruthless with yourself, because poverty begins in permission, and wealth begins in command. You must command your thinking as a general commands an army. No confusion, no compromise, no laziness, only direction. And that direction must be forged by your definiteness of purpose. For without purpose, you cannot build discipline. Without discipline, you cannot build structure. Without structure, you cannot build consistency. And without consistency, you cannot build legacy. Now let us look at this word legacy. It is not fame, it is not fortune, it is the invisible structure of who you became, which echoes in the world long after you are gone. And if you build your life from emotion, your legacy will vanish like smoke. But if you build your life from principle, your legacy will endure like stone. And what are the principles of the rich? Initiative over excuse, discipline over emotion, focus over noise, truth over opinion, vision over validation. They do not live by accident, they live by law. They understand cause and effect. They know, if I train the mind, the world bends to match it. If I master my emotions, I master my responses. If I control my responses, I shape my results. And if I own my results, I shape my destiny. But this power does not come to the passive. It comes to the intentional. So, I now give you a challenge not to inspire you, but to summon you. Decide today that you will no longer think like the poor. You will no longer react like the untrained. You will no longer live like your emotions deserve more attention than your vision. You will rise early, not because it's comfortable, but because your future demands it. You will move with structure, not because it's easy, but because your destiny requires it. You will speak with precision, not because you are perfect, but because your purpose is too sacred for sloppy language. And you will return day after day to the work even when no one claps, even when no one sees, because the richest minds are built in silence. Because true wealth is invisible first, and only later does the world begin to see what you've become. Think big, start small, act like the rich, and you will become what you consistently command yourself to be. Now hear me. The world does not change for those who complain, it changes for those who command. And the first battlefield of that command is not in politics, nor in markets, nor in the opinions of others is in the private theater of your own mind. Master that, and you become one of the few, one of the rare, one of the rich, not merely in finance, but in function, not merely in status, but in self-possession. Because the rich are not governed by chaos, they are governed by law. The law of cause and effect, the law of sowing and reaping, the law of inner order creating outer achievement. So, when you think big, you do not dream, you decide. And when you start small, you do not delay, you build. And when you act like the rich, you do not imitate wealth, you inhabit it. Because wealth is not first measured in currency, it is measured in command. The man who cannot command himself will never command anything else. Your emotional state must no longer be your steering wheel, it must be your passenger. You may hear it, you may acknowledge it, but you will no longer hand it the keys. Your thoughts must no longer be a playground of doubt and distraction. They must become tools, sharpened, stored, wielded with discipline, used with precision. And your identity must no longer be the echo of your past, but the blueprint of your future. Let the old self decay. Let the small self dissolve. Let the emotionally weak, mentally foggy, approval-seeking self be buried in the silence of your new decisions. You have been called not to inspiration, but to initiation. This is not motivation. This is transformation. Not by one great act, but by 10,000 small ones. By waking up when it is hard. By returning to your craft when no one believes in you. By writing the sentence when your mind is tired. By saying no when the crowd says yes. By staying still when your old self wants to react. By rising early when your old self craves ease. By commanding yourself with firmness, with faith, and with fire. Because that is what it means to act like the rich. It means you obey your vision, not your voice of weakness. It means you serve your future, not your feelings. It means you devote yourself to clarity, not to convenience. The poor think from urgency. The rich think from design. The poor live in reaction. The rich live in rhythm. The poor look for escape. The rich look for execution. And the greatest execution is not in public, but in private. Every moment you choose discipline over comfort, you are building a fortune that cannot be taxed, stolen, or faked. You are depositing power into the vault of your soul. And when enough of those deposits have been made, the world must respond. Not because you begged it to, not because you chased it, but because the power within you became undeniable. That is the meaning of true wealth. It is not what you show, it is what you know. It is not what you own, it is what you control. And what you must now control is yourself. If you do not take command of your thoughts, someone else will. If you do not master your emotional state, someone else will manipulate it. If you do not discipline your habits, your potential will rot in regret. But if you do, if you decide now to train the mind like a soldier, feed the soul like a king, and act with the certainty of someone who has already claimed victory, then no man, no system, no history can stop you. Because you have chosen to no longer live like the poor in spirit, but to walk with the composure, clarity, and calm fire of the rich in mind. And make no mistake, that fire will change your world. It will change the way people see you. It will change the way doors open. It will change the way challenges bend before your presence. Because you have become rare. You have become exacting. You have become consistent. You have become, through repetition, through solitude, through obedience to vision, a person who lives above reaction, and from that altitude, you are free. Free to build, free to decide, free to act, free to create wealth, not just in number, but in nature. And let the final law ring through your being like thunder. If you master yourself, you will never again need to master anyone else, because the world itself will align to the one who governs his mind. So now, stand, command, breathe with purpose, speak with weight, move with structure. And from this day forward, make every thought, every breath, every movement echo this decision. I will think big. I will start small. And I will act without hesitation, without fear, without failure, like the rich in mind, in spirit, in command. Because I am rich not by fortune, but by discipline. Not by fame, but by focus. Not by chance, but by choice. This is the day you take full possession of your mind. And when the mind is yours, the world is next. This is not the end. This is the unveiling. For too long, you have bowed to the weaker voice within. For too long, you have delayed the decision that changes everything. For too long, you have carried the crown of your own mind like a burden when it was meant to be worn with power. But now, you rise. You rise not as a seeker of permission, but as a declarer of destiny. You rise not with trembling hands, but with hands that build empires from the invisible blueprints of thought. You rise not to survive, but to conquer yourself, to command your field, to bend the timeline of your life, to match the vision you hold inside. You are not here to try. You are not here to dabble. You are not here to beg. You are here to embody the force that breaks chains, ends cycles, and redefines what is possible. Because if you do not decide now, this hour, this second, this breath, then life will decide for you. And life does not reward indecision. It tramples it. But if you do decide, if you burn the bridges back to weakness, if you destroy the excuses, if you obliterate the identity that once kept you caged, then everything shifts. Not one day. Today. Today is the day you stop reacting and start reigning. Today is the day you stop looking outward and start ruling inward. Today is the day you stop watching others build and start forging your own legacy with mind, breath, and blood. And what legacy is that? It is not money alone. It is not applause. It is not comfort. It is this: the proof that one man, one woman, one soul who mastered their mind could master everything else. Let them say you were too intense. Let them say you were too focused. Let them say you changed. Good. Because change is the cry of a soul that refused to die ordinary. The world will try to calm you, shrink you, soften you. But you were not born to be soft. You were born to be sacred and strategic, a builder of unseen foundations, a warrior of inner silence, a commander of thought, of energy, of movement. So now, in this final moment, do not whisper your commitment. Roar it. Declare it not in words, but in will. Say to yourself, this is the day I become rich in mind. This is the day I take possession of the only empire that matters, myself. This is the day I dethrone emotion, install discipline, and breathe only purpose. This is the day I stop repeating patterns and start writing prophecy. This is the day I no longer dream about becoming. I become. From this moment forward, you move with authority. You think big. You start small. You act with unstoppable precision. And the world, like metal to magnet, will shape itself around the heat of your new nature. This is how legends are born, not in noise, not in applause, but in the quiet execution of a soul that refused to betray its power. So go now. Build with fire. Move with clarity. Live like your mind is already free. Because it is. And now so are you.